Welcome to our series of interviews with Open Conf 2024 speakers. I'm Lampros Pappas, an engineering manager at Citrix and member of the Open Conf 2024 organizing team. With me, I have Despina Kitsou, senior product manager at Nokia and fellow member of the Open Conf organizing team. Today, we are proud to host Violet Whitney and William Martin, keynote speakers at Open Conf 2024, co-founders of Spatial Pixel, and esteemed experts in the field of spatial computing. So, hi, folks. It's great having you.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi, thanks for having us.
So, yes, thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining OpenConf and being our keynotes. So, let's begin. And Violet and William, I know that you are both co-founders of Spatial Pixel. And I'm going to quote what Spatial Pixel is: an AI research and design studio focused on empowering people with digital and spatial agency. So, can you tell us first a little bit about yourself and your career? What did inspire you to co-found something together in the spatial computing industry? And a little bit of I read your bios and I checked that you are both adjunct assistant professors at Columbia University. Is that where you met actually?
No, actually.
Yeah.
Do you want to start off?
Yeah, actually, we met at a meetup in New York and actually realized that we lived across the hall from each other. And so that's how we got to know each other to start. Yeah. And then, but actually, as far as my background goes, I studied architecture. And at that time, I also studied computational design. And after graduating, I spent several years as an academic. Then I moved into technology. I was a software engineer at a data science startup. And then I moved into product management, where I worked for a cloud computing company and was also director of product at a sustainability technology company and head of product at a real estate visualization company. And then finally, I was director of artificial intelligence at Consensus, which is a Web3 blockchain software company. And I really wanted to start getting back to my roots in architecture, actually, and try to take that spatial understanding and turn it into real technology that can change the world.
Strangely enough, one of the reasons we met is because we found each other at a meetup that had a lot of overlap in the types of things we're interested in. So I have a really similar background. I started in architecture, went into product and the tech industry. So I was director of product at Sidewalk Labs, which was Google's Future Cities initiative. But after spending a lot of time in product, and actually after spending a lot of time during COVID staring at a computer screen, it was just amazing to me how much these two industries really could learn from each other. And I just, like all of us, just couldn't stare at a screen anymore. And it just makes so much sense for us to be able to use these kinds of like spatial interactions, moving around the way we do in the real world. And we were starting to see that it was finally possible to have these spatial and embodied natural interactions. And so that's why we decided to start our company, really. It was something we wanted to do for a long time.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Violet, my next question is to you. As you probably know, two of the main themes of OpenConf 2024 is AI and also extended reality, augmented reality, virtual reality. So, do you feel that the spatial computing field has been already disrupted by the recent advancements in the Gen AI and VR, AR field tools, technologies? And can you let us know what do you think will be the next big advancement, big development that you foresee affecting the field of spatial computing?
Yeah. One thing that's just kind of amazing is the fact that these two things are emerging at the same time. So the fact that we're starting to see AI and these very natural, easy, accessible ways to communicate with a computer, as well as starting to see spatial computing and being able to reason more spatially come together. It's the fact that those two things are emerging at the same time that is going to allow us to have these kind of computing interactions that are actually outside of a computer screen. So I think we're already starting to see some of these AI wearables, beyond just the glasses, and Meta came out with Ray-Bans that you can talk to. We're also seeing things like the Humane Pin and the Rabbit R1. And a lot of companies haven't figured it out yet. You can see like a lot of these companies stumbling. But that's really where the next big investment is. It's like, okay, let's not look at our phone. Let's not look at our screen. Let's actually start to see our interfaces in our environment. And it's really like AI as well as spatial computing that allows those two things to come together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and adding on to that a little bit, I think generative AI can accelerate spatial computing to a large degree. Not only can it, like with tools like ChatGPT and Claude, like not only do you have the ability to generate code that might be difficult or obscure to write yourself, the actual techniques that power generative AI are now more accessible than ever. And we see this in techniques like Scene Script out of Meta that is using an encoder-decoder architecture with an intermediate representation to make vision models that are really, really spectacular and really efficient. And so I think there's tons and tons of opportunity that are afforded by the algorithms and techniques that are powering generative AI. And that's really what we need for spatial computing, I think, to become more mainstream. So we need better vision models, better 3D comprehension models, things like that. And I think the techniques are readily available for us today.
Yeah. Thanks for the insights. It's interesting. Actually, an interesting story is that when we were deciding for this year's themes, it was close to the announcement of Apple Vision Pro. So we figured this year is going to be big in terms of extended reality and all things around. I liked what you said earlier, that several companies are still figuring things out. The field is disrupted, but yeah, it's not let's say 100% mature yet. There's a lot of way to create new things, to experiment. Yeah, I'm excited about those developments, to be honest.
Yeah. So exactly. So now that's okay. You have founded a Spatial Pixel. So what do you perceive to be your core mission, and where do you see yourselves evolving into, let's say, the next 5 to 10 years? Actually, what I have read in the Gartner's 2024 Emerging Tech Impact Radar is the spatial computing, okay, time for adoption is 6 to 8 years. Okay, do you agree this is earlier, this is later?
Yeah. So just starting, one of the main things that we're trying to do is just make it so that people can be more present in the physical spaces they're in the moment they're in, be more present with the people they're with. And we think a big part of this is actually almost a counter movement, almost like a resistance movement to what's emerging from things like wearables that are very individualized. I might see a different reality than you see. So we're really interested in building a new kind of spatial computing, one that's, we like to say, for your space instead of for your face. And so what that does is when we start to use embodied and environmental computing with projection and audio, we start to see the same things and interact with each other more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And I think Going back to mentioning generative AI as well, I think for the first time, we see a technology that can actually enable computers to speak human. So that, like, ChatGPT can understand our intent. We can use capabilities like function calling and large language models to respond to human intent. It's the first time where humans aren't asked yet again to learn how to click through yet another interface and then go through the kind of standard data entry paradigm that we all have. And so now we can actually start to experiment with this realm where a computer can listen to a person and really unpack what they're talking about and then respond to that. And that's enormously exciting for trying to de-individualize technology and get our attentions out of individual screens and back into the world.
So basically, you like to bring the people together rather than divide them in a space like today.
Yeah, totally. And
I think yeah, please.
William, yeah, please.
Oh yeah, and we see a trend when we're teaching as well, where the attentions of students are sometimes really mixed. Back when I started teaching, maybe 15 years ago, like it was very much about an in-presence, like a physical presence of people in the classroom, and we would build bridges out of spaghetti together and really understand the dynamics of structural forces, for example. And today we see a lot of trying to fight to get students to focus on each other and collaborate with each other. Right now, they seem to sit next to each other and collaborate through each other with the computer screen or with their tablet or with their phone. And so, but we really believe that there are ways to get the advantages of modern technology without having to completely gaze our eyes onto glowing screens.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And on this moving from an individual perspective to a more collective experience, I think that in every wearable product, at least this is my perspective, starting even from Google Glasses several years ago and to Apple Vision Pro, I think the concerns that most of the consumers had is that they end up being on their own and being awkward. So yeah, I'm totally interested by what you mentioned, to move to more collective experiences involving space. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Yeah, my next question is to William. How do you see your field, your company, but the field of spatial computing in general affecting industries like healthcare, education, entertainment? Do you have some use cases in mind? How do you see this?
Yeah, totally. I'll start. I think we had a chat with a friend of ours a few weeks ago about emergency rooms. So speaking of healthcare, it's apparently still more efficient in an emergency room or an intensive care unit in some hospitals to record the states of patients on physical glass in the emergency room. And so you're still writing with a whiteboard on a specialized piece of glass and keeping track that way of a patient's condition, their treatment, and so on and so forth. And this is really fascinating to us because it means that there's an information system that's ambient and present, and it's much easier to both update that information system and read the information system by being this physical spatial thing. And that board is sitting right next to computers where there's a kind of staged login process where a healthcare worker has to credential into it, find the patient's information, look up on a very confused data entry style screen the information that they need. And that just takes so much more time collectively that it's just easier to write it up on the board. And I think that there are ways to get the best of both worlds, where if you had, say, for example, cameras tuned on that board and that becomes the main entry point, then maybe there are ways to update the information systems, combine that with the real-time data that are coming from monitoring systems, and really help to signal the healthcare workers that there are improvements or challenges with that patient that need to be addressed in a more timely fashion. And it's really that kind of partnership between the physical world and the digital world that we're trying to explore. And so for healthcare in particular, I think that example really inspired us, I think, to think about what is that nature of knowledge that's in the world versus knowledge that's in the computer. So.
Yeah, totally. And actually, like, just a related but slightly separate use case there is we've been thinking a lot about things like neurodivergent interfaces. So there's a lot of development right now in things like body tracking, gesture, even things like the Neuralink and brain-computer interfaces are advancing. And so we're so used to the mouse and keyboard. A lot of the reason for that is just, that's what we've had, and it's been built into everything. But we're at a moment where we can really think that input mechanism, like William says, you can just write on a whiteboard. So we think that this is also an opportunity to extend interfaces in a more neurodivergent way. The way I want to input information for how my body is structured, how my mind is structured might be slightly different. And maybe a computer and a mouse isn't always the best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And then education, of course, is close, near and dear to our hearts. We're trying to find ways all the time about creating kinds of workshops and different educational experiences that can become more physical. And I think that example from teaching something like structural engineering, for example, if there were ways of sort of continuing to bridge that gap between the physical and digital, I think then we can probably create education experiences that are a lot more engaging. And so we already see that the kind of standard lecture format where someone stands up at the front of the room and talks to and talks at a set of students isn't working anymore. And so maybe there's a way of using some of these spatial computing techniques, things that leverage projection and cameras and sensors and things like that, to expand beyond even just the more obvious cases around learning physics or learning structural engineering, but to other topics as well. And that's a really exciting place for us, where we're able to iterate on that much more readily. So.
Okay. Well, thanks for that input. It was very interesting. And now I would like to ask you a question that's in relevance with our audience. What advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs who want to enter this field of spatial computing? Is there something in particular hint that you can give them?
Yeah. One thing that has really stuck with me was actually an interview I was saying with Jeff Bezos, who is saying that large language models aren't an invention, they're a discovery. We almost don't know exactly the best use cases for them, exactly how they're going to behave in different situations. Like we can see how it's structured and how it works, but it has emergent properties. So we actually have to kind of test it. And so I think in the realm of spatial computing and AI, we should take time to do research and discovery, explore what it can do first, and kind of lead with the research versus trying too hard to start with the end solution, because we actually need to kind of learn how it behaves, which is very, for two people that came from product, it's very backwards. You starting with research instead of with the specific use case and intention. It is almost the opposite of what you usually do.
Yeah, totally. And I think something as well that would be important for this space is to find a good interaction designer early to work with and to work with your company. Oftentimes designers are amongst the last hires in a startup. You really pack like startups often pack their teams with engineers to start because generally the technology is really difficult, or if you're in a kind of hard tech space. And then designers often get hired as contractors to do your brand, and then sometime later on you start worrying about user experience. But in this space, like finding a good interaction designer early on is key, because spatial computing is about exploring that new space of how you can interact with physical objects. What are the kind of first principles you need to adopt? How do you iterate quickly? How do you understand different users and segment them? How do you build experiments to try to understand how people are going to interact with those methods? And interaction designers are the ones who are going to be the ones that really understand that discipline and can do that in a creative way, in a way that's not just necessarily about optimizing a login flow or ensuring that particular interactions are delivering their value for a feature. But you need those folks that are really great at exploring that ambiguous space of interaction and can build up that practice that you need to deliver value in this kind of new area.
So you definitely need people that are more physical rather than an engineer that is in front of.
It should be a good partnership between them. So the program that we teach in at Columbia is a computational designers program, and so we think that computational designers live in that space between being able to understand the physical but also the technical side of it, and they need each other because it's really about exchanging the learnings from both sides.
We need to learn whatever we have learned until now, because we have come a lot. We are not that engaged with our physical environment anymore. I think we are not that. Anyhow,
that's right.
Okay. Lampros?
Yeah, as we reach to the end of our short interview, I would like to ask you folks if you have a message to our viewers and OpenConf 2024 attendees. If there's a single most important learning that you wish they will get out of your presence, out of your speech in OpenConf 2024, what is it?
I think it's don't forget that the world around you is very spatial, and that we don't have to just accept these kind of old, flat interaction patterns, or even the interaction patterns that big tech companies create. We can actually create our own new interaction patterns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, +1. I think it's not all about the glasses. Spatial computing is the how, and there's something about inventing new techniques and new methods to help support an open community of these technologies and techniques. And it's not all just about learning Apple's libraries for the Vision Pro. Remember that there's a tangible space around you, and and that there couldn't be a better time to start using all of these technologies together and being the ones to help glue them together and create whole new patterns of interaction. So.
Yeah. It's all this stuff that's emerging right now, this is the moment to rethink everything. Right. So let's not just accept whatever is getting fed to us.
Yeah. Great insights, folks. I'm looking forward to your speech and your presence in OpenConf 2024. I would like to urge our viewers to grab their tickets in openconf.gr/tickets. Looking forward to see all three of you and the rest of our viewers there. Have a nice rest of the day.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.